There has been a lot of updates on the stimulus check things and whether we're going to get them or not. But according to the Congress, it says they have no choice but to pass another bill if it goes through. Ever since the passage of the CARE Acts back in March, there has been a growing level of speculation about the possibility of a second stimulus bill. And while some Republicans have been downplaying the possibility, the likelihood is growing by the day. It may not be an exaggeration to say that Congress has no choice but to pass a second stimulus bill. Public anticipation of a second stimulus has been apparent since the last stimulus payments cleared personal bank accounts back in April and May. And far from the promised flattening of the coronavirus curve and the so-called V-shaped recovery, the forces are gathering steam behind another round of payments. The entire reason for the first round of stimulus payments is the rapid onset of the coronavirus. The number of new infections hit an early peak of around 40,000 back in April. Daily totals began declining shortly after incompetent predictions had us moving into the flattening of the coronavirus for the coronavirus curve. For a time, that certainly did seem to be the case. New infections dropped to the 20,000 level in May and early June, but the coronavirus did something unexpected around the middle of June, and it took a steep upward turn. By late June, the number of new cases exceeded 50,000 on several days and soared past 61,000 on July 8th, with the rapid escalation of new cases, particularly in some belt states. Expectations of a sharp but short recession had begun to fade. With the record of 40,401 new cases of the coronavirus reported in the United States on Thursday, on June 26 alone, and many parts of the South and West now facing alarming spikes just weeks after beginning to reopen, the reported Forbes staff writers Sarah Hansen and Lisette Voigt called those states are now hitting the pause button on reopening. States pausing or reversing the reopening process include heavyweights like California, Texas, Florida, and New York, and more than a dozen other states are following the same course. It's not just the official positions of individual cities and states in imposing restrictions either. As the number of coronavirus infections expand, people are understandably reluctant to go back to anything that approaches normal activity as of right now. The combination of official restrictions and hesitations at the individual level are keeping downward pressure on the economy. Distress continues in major economic sectors, including in-person events and entertainment, travel and tourism, and restaurants and bars, but those are only the most obvious. What the hell's it doing? Yep. And then the unemployment's getting really bad too. It says number of new unemployment applications have been steadily since April. The unemployment picture remains at a high. Let's see if I could try to do this again for a minute. Let's see if I can try to get this into a better screening. Get back to where I was at. Okay, here we go. Unemployment. Okay, though the number of new unemployment applications have been declining steadily since April, the unemployment picture remains at a crisis level. The U.S. Department of Labor reported 1.31 million new claims for the unemployment rate as of July 9th, indicating the economic fallout of the pandemic continues to have a negative impact on jobs. And though the unemployment rate has fallen from the peak of 14.7% in April, it still remains stubbornly high at 12.4%. That translates into one of every 8 workers being out of a job. In fact, more than 18 million American workers continue to be unemployed. It's also worth noting that the resurgence in virus cases only began 3 weeks ago, and that might be too recent to have a tangible effect on the employment rate. But if the number of new coronavirus cases continue to escalate, improvement in unemployment could come to an abrupt end. As hopes of a V-shaped recovery begin to fade, many are now wondering, will these layoffs be permanent? This is what Renee Morad from a Forbes contributor had asked. A recent study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, also known as NBER, estimates that 42% of the coronavirus-related layoffs will become permanent job losses. On the economic front, Goldman Sachs projected a decline in gross domestic product of 33% for the second quarter of this year, and though they project a similarly dramatic increase in the third quarter, up 33%, both numbers were forecast prior to the upturn in coronavirus cases. If a number of infections continue to increase, expect the third quarter growth projection to be cut significantly. Though much of the attention in the CARES Act has been centered on the $1,200 stimulus payments issued back in April, which was even more critical to the economy and especially to the job market, has been the federal unemployment enhancement. It was the government was providing $600 weekly supplement to the standard unemployment benefit paid at the state level for many millions of workers. The combination of the federal and state unemployment benefits has not only kept many of the unemployed afloat financially, it's even provided an income that exceeds regular pay for many. Research from the University of Chicago shows as many as 68% of unemployment and insurance-eligible workers may be receiving benefits that are higher than their regular earnings. It's further around 20% of unemployed workers earning at least twice as much as their normal earnings. There's little doubt that the federal unemployment provision has enabled many millions of unemployed workers to pay their bills. At the same time, it's also prevented the economy from falling much further than it could have. But for all the benefits that have come from the federal unemployment enhancement, it's due to end on July 31st. If it's not extended past month end, the economy may go well into a free fall while unemployment skyrockets. That makes a strong case for either extending the full level of federal benefits or implementing a stair-step reduction to ease the transition. The case for an extension of those benefits may get even stronger in just a few weeks. As many as 20 million renters are now at risk of eviction. Many state and local moratoriums on tenant evictions, which was enacted back in March and April, are due to expire soon, so is the protection provided renters under the CARES Act. The CARES Act placed a 120-day moratorium on evictions, reported the Forbes contributor Zach Friedman. However, that eviction moratorium expires on July 25th, 2020. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, states such as New York, California, Texas, and Florida could experience the most evictions based on rent cost and unemployment rate. Given the combination of the sudden resurgence in the coronavirus cases, recession-level unemployment, and the prospect of millions being evicted from their homes, it's hard to imagine any politician opposing a second stimulus bill. At a minimum, there's a clear need to enact some type of extension of the federal unemployment benefit, and if the economy continues down the hill that it is, a second round of stimulus payments may be necessary to cushion this fall. The combination of the two may also be the perfect injection of some level of optimism going into the election season. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives has already paid the HEROES Act. The bill provides for both extension of the federal unemployment of the federal unemployment benefit as well as the issue of the second round of $1,200 checks. Only this time, those stimulus payments will go to each member of every eligible household. A family of 5 could receive $6,000, which is the maximum under this plan. If passed in its current state, these will be more generous than the CARES Act, which provide only $500 per eligible child. The HEROES Act eliminates the distinction between the taxpayers and children with a $1,000 $200 benefit for each. The bill currently is stalled in the Senate and may not come up for a vote in the Republican-controlled Labor if the Labor Department's final report on June unemployment continues to show significant improvement, but as the number of new coronavirus cases is reaching record high, unemployment may stagnate or weaken. If it does, Republican opposition to a second stimulus package may fade quickly. The second stimulus package may be about to get a big boost from the 45 White House. The squatter has signaled support for another round. If 45 gets his way in Congress, then his vision for a second stimulus check implies a second stimulus check larger than $1,200 for each individual, reports Zach Friedman. He may support a larger stimulus check than the Democrats. To date, Senate Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch, are unlikely to support a second stimulus. However, this could change due to a pressure from the White House, worsening unemployment numbers, and potentially more positive cases due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If that seems like a complete reversal of the previous White House position on a second stimulus, it's hardly surprising. After all, the squatter himself is facing re-election in November. Combined pressure from Democrats, the White House, and the state of both the economy and the coronavirus pandemic is likely to cause a sufficient number of Republicans in the Senate to shift gears and support a second stimulus bill. It's very likely to be well in excess of the $1 trillion counter proposal that they've suggested to date. And given the current direction of the coronavirus, as well as the tentative at best state of the economy, it looks certain a second stimulus will be passed. The only questions remaining are when are we going to get it, how much are we going to get, and who will get it. An extension of the federal unemployment program is highly likely before July 31st. It may not be the $600 per week currently being paid. However, there is evidence of bipartisan support for an extension of the reduced federal unemployment assistance, known as the Worker Relief and Security Act. It's been proposed by Don Beyer, who's a Democrat from Virginia. Though it has been somewhat complicated, a complicated calculation based on the level of unemployment in each state, it will nonetheless extend federal payments. But there's also a solid reason to expect a second round of stimulus payments to the general public. The rising number of coronavirus cases, infections, in combination with its uncertain impact of the economy, it's likely to result in the kind of voter anxiety politicians love going into an election year. It's hard to imagine any politician facing re-election without having cast his or her vote for a stimulus plan designed to benefit tens of millions of voters at a time of economic and health-related stress. Once the Senate reconvenes later this month, you can expect them to feel the heat from voters on a second stimulus bill. The coronavirus pandemic has already succeeded in pushing the election fanfare into the second half of the year. But even though this election season may be shorter than any in American history, it may very well become the most intense. With less than 4 months remaining before Election Day, there isn't enough time for any politician to be on the wrong side of this issue. Look for a second stimulus package complete with a federal unemployment benefit extension to be passed in the next few weeks.